Welcome to Larry the Alchemist, and welcome to another edition of No Metal Monday. This is where I get together with you on Mondays to talk all things not heavy metal and hard rock. I thought it would be fun to have a series where I talk about some of the music that I listen to outside of the metal and hard rock world, or albums that sort of influenced me that weren't hard rock and heavy metal. So today, we're going to be talking about the Devo album, Freedom of Choice. This is their third studio album, came out in 1980. I've talked about on my channel a bunch of times how I had an uncle that was only 9 years older than me, and he exposed me to Kiss, Cheap Trick, what else? Ted Nugent. He was really into Ted Nugent. And he also really liked Devo, which was really interesting. So I was exposed to Devo through him. And I've always liked Devo, and I especially really like this album. This is the album with Whip It on it. So this is the album that sort of broke them big, got them on MTV and everything. What I find interesting about Devo, and as I was revisiting and listening to this record, I haven't listened to it in quite some time. They remind me a little bit of like Kraftwerk. If you've ever heard Kraftwerk, they were a very early electronic band. But Devo is sort of like this 80s update of Kraftwerk, adding this sort of sense of humor and sometimes even like kind of a dark humor to what they do. It's also interesting because Devo, if you see them on stage, live performances, they do this sort of very robotic thing. They move around like they're robots. You know, I know there's videos of them where they just stand up on stage completely frozen until the music starts. And it's sort of ironic because nowadays with a lot of electronic music, everything's computerized, everything's quantized and drum machines and everything. So today it sounds very, very stiff. They were sort of going for that stiff robotic thing, but they were doing it naturally. Like the drums are electronic drums and they're playing the instruments. It doesn't even sound like sequencers to me. It sounds like they're actually playing all these keyboard parts. So it gives it sort of this really, really interesting sound. The sounds are dated in a way, the synth sounds, the electronic drum sounds, but it's what gives the charm to this. And it's almost like that Devo signature sound is these sort of primitive synths and the electronic drums and everything, and the way they're trying to sound like robots without the technology, if you will. And so it sort of creates this really interesting, unique sound. I think I was able to get into them when I was younger because there's more guitar on this than I realized. For instance, the opening track, Girl You Want, that opening riff is really, really cool. This little half step thing that he's doing, bouncing off of the octave. I love the chorus in that. I love the feel of that. Whip It, I've probably heard that too many times, but I mean, when you're out at an 80s night at some club and the DJ plays it, it's always fun. Snowball is a cool one. There's a lot of interesting, too, chord progressions. Like even in Whip It, the chords sort of move around in a very sort of angular, block-like manner. Sometimes it doesn't sound like they quite fit. They're a little bit jarring. Mark Mothersbaugh, I think is how you pronounce his last name, and the bass player Gary Gerald Casale are the primary songwriters, mostly Mark. And Mark would go on to do movies and television stuff. For instance, he wrote the music for the cartoon Rugrats. When my daughter was little, she used to watch Rugrats. So there's some really sort of creative, little quirky musical things going on in here. Freedom of Choice, the title track, I really like. It's got this tribal kind of drum thing and sort of chanting chorus. Side 2 starts with Gates of Steel. Now, I'm not sure who's singing on this. Maybe if somebody out there is a Devo fanatic, they can let me know down below. I have some friends that are really into Devo. I should have asked them. But Gates of Steel sounds like somebody else singing. And I'm not going to say it's certainly not a metal song, but it borders on being a rock song. It's got some sort of big, blocky power chords inside it and everything, which is pretty cool. Cold War, sort of the same way. And that's another interesting thing about Devo. They'd have songs that were sort of, just sort of fun and silly. Girl You Want, Whip It. But then they would also sort of address certain topics like Cold War, where they sort of have this dark humor to what they do. That's Pep, I believe is how that title is pronounced. A really oddball, strange chorus. Mr. B's Ballroom, I like that one too. Another really bizarre, weird one. And Planet Earth, another one that again has this sort of dark humor to it that I really appreciate and enjoy. So it was fun revisiting this because again, it really brought me back how at this time, how different and strange Devo was when you saw them. You know, I had heard them from my uncle, but then when I saw that video for Whip It and saw some of their other videos, it was like, wow, man, these guys are really weird, really weird. And the way they use the synths and the vocals and everything, it's just you know, it just had its own sound, and I think that it's a lot of fun. And it really, when you think of the '80s, you know, they're one of those big bands because of the Whip It video and just yeah, you know, the whole sort of early days of electronic music, early days of computers and stuff like that. They were sort of there for that. So, all right, there you go, Devo, Freedom of Choice. Let me know what you guys, if you're familiar with this album, if you're familiar with Devo, if you like Devo at all. I mean, everybody's heard Whip It, right? Let me know in the comments down below, and we'll see you again at the next No Metal Monday.